Geez, Ozzy, why you gotta tell us about the Turtle Boy drama? We don't care about the Turtle Boy drama. It just makes us all look bad. If you took your eye off the ball, then I'm not surprised that you feel that way. What was the ball that we were focusing on? Ah yes, Massachusetts State Police corruption, and how low they will go to cover up their own crimes. Right? Isn't that why we're all here following the Karen Read case? Since some of you took your eye off the ball, I'm going to remind you what the Turtle Boy drama has to do with the Karen Read case. It's just more Massachusetts State Police abusing their power. So from the top, and for those up the back, let's revisit what this is all about. Remember, very early in the piece, like way back at the hospital when John was declared deceased, the McAlberts had already whispered in the ears of the O'Keefes and convinced them that Karen Read had done this. So, when Karen Read was arrested the first time, she was expected to plead out. She was supposed to accept all the responsibility and take a plea deal for some sort of shortened sentence, I guess. But as we know, that's not what she did. Instead, she found herself a lawyer, and at her first arraignment, she bonded out. This greatly angered the McAlberts because they're still on the hook if she doesn't plead out. And of course, they're still whispering in the O'Keefe's ears, and so they are also angered because she bonded out. So what did the police do? They doubled down, and they arrested her again, this time for premeditated murder. Of course, David Yannetti isn't going to let her take any plea deals, and they start working towards bonding her out a second time. And of course this angers the O'Keefes and the McAlberts even more. At her first bail hearing, her bond was set at $100,000. At her second bail hearing, it was reduced to $80,000. But there were also conditions. Among others, one of the conditions was to refrain from contacting the witnesses or other people involved in the case. You may recall that this is the first time we heard of her third-party culprit defence. Contrary to what the media claims, Aidan Carney wasn't aware of the third-party culprit defence. According to Yannetti and Jackson, they were made aware of what really happened to Officer John O'Keefe via a tip, who later recanted the tip. And since we know Aidan Carney has not recanted anything, then we know he's not the tipster. In fact, Aidan Carney had nothing to do with this case up until April 2023. Here's the backstory for those who don't know it. Aidan Carney was a blogger who originally started a website called TB Daily Sports, and that's essentially what he started out reporting on. Along the ways, he tripped over some pretty big stories regarding Massachusetts police corruption, and this began his career as a journalist in covering the local news and the local corruption. Some of the biggest stories that he broke that the mainstream media wouldn't were the CDL licensing scandal and the overtime scandal, both of which have netted some 50 or 60 Massachusetts State Police being arrested. So obviously he's not making friends in the State Police Department. One of the troopers that Aidan had covered in a story was a woman named Leah Genduso. He accidentally discovered that she used to be a drug dealer. And so the articles that he covered on her were basically asking why the Massachusetts State Police are hiring criminals to become state troopers. All of this is obviously prior to Officer O'Keefe's murder in 2022. Also prior to that date, Aidan had become the target of someone who used to write articles for his website. What they fell out over is really beside the point. The fact is they fell out, and she went on a rampage. along with her many well-known tricks that she played on other public personalities, she forged federal documents. I'll let her tell the story in her own words.
Did you present a falsified complaint, federal copyright claim complaint?
100% yes.
Okay.
So, not only does he have this crazy broad that we call KP, or Krusty Panties, weaponising the law against him, but he's also got this ex-Massachusetts state trooper that he published articles about who had lost her job, targeting him as well. And well, you know how the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend? These two insane women ended up joining forces due to their mutual hatred of Aidan Carney. What looks to be the case now, via the Betterow letters, is that these two found themselves a honeypot. For those who are unfamiliar with espionage fiction, a honeypot or honey trap are terms that the CIA uses for an operational practice involving the use of a covert agent, usually a female, to create a romantic relationship to compromise a target. We also find out through the Betterow letters that Miss Peter actually does fancy herself as a CIA fictional character. It's only much later, after Aidan Carney is arrested, and Lindsay Gattani's phone records are accidentally handed over to Aidan Carney's defence team, that he realises she's a double agent. And the whole time that she's manipulating him romantically, she's also operating multiple fake social media accounts, trashing the guy. We also find out, through the Betterow letters, that Miss Gattani was indeed working hand in hand with Miss Peter and Miss Genduso and multiple Massachusetts State Police officers to frame Carney for things he never did. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's rewind this story back to April of 2023. Up to this point, Aidan Carney has little to no interest in the Karen Read case at all. He's heard about the How Long to Die in the Cold Google search, and it's at least sparked enough interest for him to start collecting some of the court documents. At this point, he expresses an interest in looking into the Karen Read case, to which a person named Natalie reached out to him, claiming to be a very close friend of Karen's from Bentley University. It turns out she didn't know Karen from a bar of soap. She just did what all YouTubers do when she saw the story in the news. She tracked down all the players on Facebook, sent them all messages, and the first one that replied to her she made instant friends with. I'm sure Karen was standoffish at first and had no idea who this chick was, but for a time they did share a friendship just through messages, and she did share a lot of her thoughts with Natalie. Then in turn, Natalie started sharing them with Aidan. And that's when Aidan started writing about Karen's story. His very first article was written on the 18th of April 2023, based solely on the information that Natalie had provided him. It turns out that Natalie had pestered Karen so much by June that Karen told her to give it a rest. Natalie was so outraged and incensed that Karen had said such a thing to her, and she demanded that Aidan fix it for her. She put Aidan in touch with Karen, which effectively removed her as the middle person and made Aidan's job a lot easier. He was now able to ask Karen and her legal team questions directly. And then Natalie became so outraged and incensed that Aidan wouldn't fix her relationship with Karen for her that she started rampaging in forums and groups, trashing both Karen and Aidan. And of course we all know whose attention she caught, right? You guessed it, Kate Peter. And before you know it, she's colluding with Leah, Lindsay and Kate on the best ways to weaponise the law against Aidan Carney. In case it wasn't clear, the Lindsay and Natalie sagas are unfolding at the same time, pretty much with Kate Peter orchestrating everything in the background with her buddy Leah. Now I'm going to jump forward on the timeline to describe a more recent drama before we tie it all back to why it all matters. Somewhere along this timeline, involving Lindsay and Natalie, Sean McDonough pops up, retired DEA agent. He starts out his notoriety on a live stream with Aidan Carney discussing the case. He seems pretty clear from the outset that Aidan's got his sources and Sean has his own sources. But it turns out that's not true at all. It turns out that Sean's initial source is also Natalie. It also turns out that Natalie tried to manipulate Sean into trying to help fix her relationship with Karen as well, to which Sean, just as Aidan did, politely bowed out. And then, using his newfound popularity from appearing on Turtle Boy's show, he started his own channel on YouTube. For a long time, everybody thought Sean had different sources to Aidan Carney. But eventually, Sean came clean and told us that a lot of his source material came from none other than Natalie. From what I can work out, or long story short, we could say, when Kate, Leah and Lindsay were successful in getting Aidan Carney locked up, Sean McDonough decided he wanted nothing more to do with Aidan Carney. Little did any of us know he was actually in the background, making nice with the rest of the gang, who of course are more than happy to adopt another Aidan Carney hater into the gang, where we now today find him colluding with the others to get Aidan locked up. So that's the backstory. That should bring you up to speed on who all the players are and what their motivations are, which essentially boils down to a shared hatred for Aidan Carney. Don't be disillusioned that any one of them cares about Officer John O'Keefe or Karen Reid, because every single one of them are now colluding with the same cops who are covering up Officer John O'Keefe's death. All they care about is feeding their hatred of Aidan Carney. This is the level of low that John's murderers will go to. We're starting to see email leaks and text message leaks, indicating that this little band of Kate Peters' merry men have been tasked with breaking up the Free Karen Reid movement. And nobody hates us more than the McAlberts. Don't forget, they threatened to bury Aidan Carney's corpse under Auntie Bev's seaside cottage. That's how much they hate all of us. And who is leading the charge against Karen? None other than Paul O'Keefe. Paul and Peggy are desperately looking for ways to get Karen's bond revoked. They need to shut her up. They need to stop her from garnering public support. They know that Turtle Boy is key, that he kicked off this whole public support movement. And we know that Paul O'Keefe reached out to Kate Peter because she told us so in her own words.
And R.I.P. Turtle Boy, pretty much. And that didn't happen. So I ended up getting some emails from some members of John O'Keefe's family. They had read a blog series that I had written on Turtle Boy maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And they originally came to me in my email and said, hey, do you have any more dirt on this guy? He's terrorizing our family.
Turns out Kate Peter had a lot more than dirt on Aidan Carney. She had information from Lindsay, Natalie and Sean McDonough that Karen Reid had been in contact with Aidan Carney, and that Aidan Carney, of his own volition, had gone out and made contact with witnesses in the case. Paul O'Keefe and the McAlberts then used Kate Peters' information, including undated soundbites from Turtle Boy's own streams, to have him charged with 17 counts of witness intimidation. When that didn't get him thrown in jail, they then carted Lindsay into the courtroom and tried to say that he breached his bail conditions. When that didn't get him locked up, they all colluded with the same cops who are covering up John O'Keefe's murder and Lindsay Gattani to lure him to her house, where she could claim he assaulted her. What was the net gain for the McAlberts and the O'Keefes? They had successfully connected Karen Read to Aidan Carney, and Aidan Carney with contacting witnesses or others involved in the case, thus breaking Karen Read's bond conditions. The corrupt Massachusetts State Police then seized Karen's second cell phone with all of her attorney-client communications and all of her communications with Aidan Carney to complete the link between Karen's bond being revoked through her indirect contact with witnesses and others involved in the case via Aidan Carney. So, the next time you tell me that this is all unnecessary drama that has nothing to do with the case and makes us all look bad, just remember that's exactly what the O'Keefes and the McAlberts want you to think. That is precisely why they're manipulating all of these corrupt players who are prepared to break the law and weaponize the law at the expense of innocent people just so they can exact revenge on Karen Read and get her bail revoked. And in case I haven't explained it clearly enough here, you can all go chase up the Betterow letters and have a look at what was revealed in those letters, and then you'll understand why all of this drama is linked to those letters, which in turn have been submitted as evidence in Karen Read's case. You can find readings of the Betterow letters on Melanie Little's channel, The Glarer, Alexis Room, The Young Jerks, JFK, LTL, The Broken Baker, Brandy Churchwell, and a few others. I can't remember them off the top of my head. Hopefully you'll understand them better now that you know the backstory and the connection to the Karen Read case.